This morning's scripture is from Matthew 25, beginning at verse 14. For it is as if a man going on a journey summoned his slaves and entrusted his property to them. To one he gave 5 talents, to another 2, to another 1, to each according to his ability. Then he went away. The one who had received the 5 talents went off at once and traded with them and made 5 more talents. In the same way, the one who had 2 talents made 2 more talents. But the one who had received the 1 talent went off and dug a hole in the ground and hid his master's money. After a long time, the master of these slaves came and settled accounts with them. Then the one who had received the 5 talents came forward, bringing 5 more talents, saying, Master, you handed over to me 5 talents. See, I have made 5 more talents. His master said to him, Well done, good and trustworthy slave. You have been trustworthy in a few things. I will put you in charge of many things. Enter into the joy of your master. And the one with the 2 talents also came forward, saying, Master, you handed over to me 2 talents. See, I have made 2 more talents. His master said to him, Well done, good and trustworthy slave. You have been trustworthy in a few things. I will put you in charge of many things. Enter into the joy of your master. Then the one who had received the 1 talent also came forward, saying, Master, I knew that you were a harsh man, reaping where you did not sow, and gathering where you did not scatter seed. So I was afraid, and I went and hid your talent in the ground. Here you have what is yours. But the master replied, You wicked and lazy slave, you knew, did you, that I reap where I did not sow and gather where I did not scatter? Then you ought to have invested my money with the bankers, and on my return I would have received what was my own with interest. So take the talent from him and give it to the one with the 10 talents. For to all those who have, more will be given, and they will have an abundance. But from those who have nothing, even what they have will be taken away. As for this worthless slave, throw him into the outer darkness, where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Again, we need to see if we can try to look at this as a joke and see if we can. It's difficult sometimes to enter into the world of another culture. And for sure, 1st century Palestinian Judaism is a different culture than ours. But jokes kind of work on a few rules, and the rule of 3 is a major one. 2 things happen the same way. And then a 3rd thing happens in a different way. And it's that 3rd thing happening where the humor is to be found. We've gotten used to listening to this very seriously and bringing our own cultural assumptions to it. Beginning with the word talent. When we think of the word talent, we mean, the ability to play a musical instrument, the ability to sing, acting talent, athletic ability, artistic ability. And we may even have heard, or we may have said, use it or lose it, and we're using this story to reinforce that. But in first century Greek, the word talentos didn't mean what we mean by the word talent. A talentos was a big bunch of money, a big pile of gold, a pile of gold that might weigh 50 or 75 pounds. You had to be pretty stout to even pick up a talent. People who studied it said a talent might be 15 years' wages. If you took everything you made, all the wages, if you worked every day for 15 years with no days off, and you didn't spend any of it, after 15 years, you'd have a talent. That was more money than any ordinary working person, a tenant farmer, a fishing entrepreneur, the owner of a fishing company, a day laborer. They couldn't even imagine ever having one talent, because what they earned each day went to survive it each day. There wasn't any excess. Somebody said 5 talents, that might be $74 million. What would you do with $74 million? I don't know what I'd do with $74 million. I don't know if I'd ever have it. If I had it, I wouldn't know what to do with it. We're talking big bucks here, or big talents, large amounts of an unbelievably large amount of money. And so some folks, when they understand it's money, then they start thinking about Western capitalism. You need money to make money. My retirement accounts are held by Westpath. I don't know anything about investing my retirement accounts. They have it set up on what they call life stage investments. That means the older I get, the less risk my retirement accounts take. Because although I'd like them to be larger than they are, my main concern is that in 4 or 5 years, the principal will still be there. That it wouldn't have gone away. Big risk, big return. If you have 5 talents and you risk it in the market, you try to double it, you could lose it all. And I want Westpath to be a lot more prudent with my money, because I want it to be there in 4 or 5 years. I don't want them investing in the latest big venture capital firm, in somebody trying to find the next Amazon or the next Apple or the next Facebook or whatever the next big thing will be. I'm not into that. But even that doesn't really talk about how somebody listening to this story, who maybe had grown up on a small farm, And maybe they had owned it. Maybe it was just a couple of acres, but they owned it. And whatever the produce came from it was theirs. And any excess they could sell. Or maybe, like the Zebedee and Sons Fishing Company, they had a fishing concession on the Sea of Galilee. And whatever fish they caught and sold, they got the proceeds from that. But sometimes the crops fail. Sometimes the fish can't be found. And so you might borrow to get to the next crop, the next fishing opportunity. And here comes Mr. 5 Talents, ready to lend to you. But if you can't pay, then now he owns your farm. He owns your fishing concession. And you got to pay up to him. And survival is that much more difficult. Or you've got to move your produce. You've got to move your product along the roads. And people have bought the toll road concession, the tax collecting concession for an area. And if you want to move your stuff, you've got to pay the toll, and you've got to pay the toll that the toll owner says you got to pay. Maybe Mr. 5 Talents has bought some more toll concessions. And the people Jesus is talking to are not feeling so great about Mr. 5 Talents. They're not feeling so great about Mr. 2 Talents. If we're going to try to find a funny or somewhat funny analogy, we got to think about maybe Mr. Dithers, who owns Dithers and Company. And he's always a little bit discontented with his office manager, Dagwood Bumstead. And that strip has been running since the 1920s, I think. And in all that time, I don't think Dagwood has ever gotten a raise. Every now and then, Mr. Dithers will tease one. But then he'll say, nope, no raise for you, Dagwood. Maybe that's getting toward how the people listening to Jesus are hearing this story. And they're thinking, you know, Mr. 1 Talent guy, he was prudent. The thing to do when you got a big pile of gold is bury it. And then when they come back looking for it, you say, here it is. And he's the one who gets punished. And maybe the landowner, the person who's left on the journey, isn't God at all. Maybe he's the villain. And the hero of the story is Mr. 1 Talent guy. After all, this is a story that's being told right before Jesus is going to be arrested. He's talking to his inner circle now, his disciples. He knows that they're just a couple of days away from the worst day in their life. He's just a couple of days away from the worst day of his life. The outer darkness may be the literal darkness of the dungeon at Caiaphas' house. Weeping and gnashing of teeth is what somebody who's being crucified does. It's going to look like he's lost everything. It's going to look like Jesus has lost everything. It's going to look, his disciples are going to think they've lost everything. Maybe they're going to follow Jesus to crucifixion even if the Romans catch up with them. And so they're hearing it a different way. He's getting around their defenses to get them ready for what's about to happen. And the rule of three comes in again. Because the worst day of their lives, the worst day certainly of Jesus' life, is on its way. But 3 days later, he rises. And it turns out to be a great joke. One that relaxes and empowers his disciples and lets the folks who think they're in charge know something else is